I'm an American painter painting Americans. They're everyday people doing everyday things. The tradition of portraiture has become a way to reclaim time for me as a Black figurative painter that paints Black people. The work really deals with interiority and steps away from the idea of a public Black self. Public Blackness has been culturally codified as something that's always attached to resistance, which essentially to me limits our humanity and the ways in which that we can imagine ourselves existing. I oftentimes say that the paintings are a resting place for people to see a reflection of themselves that is not in resistance or contention. It's just a Black person just being a person.
A big part of her practice is that she'll pick people off the street, mainly in Baltimore, and she'll take photos of them, or she'll invite them back to her studio and take photos of them. And so they literally are everyday people sort of doing everyday things. And I think that's felt through the work.
It's very intuitive, and I can be driving down the street and I can see someone within an instant, I know, and try to connect with this person to let me use their image.
It's almost like she's scouting the perfect subject. She's looking for something that connects to her almost on a spiritual level. It's not necessarily about any one physical quality.
Once I start the painting, it really becomes less about them and more about my work and what I see and what's happening in my imagination and the archetype that I'm trying to create. These people have let go of that idea of being watched, and they're there to meet your gaze in a different way. And it's a critique on historical Black representation, whether it be in photography or painting.
You can't look at, Amy Sherald painting and not see some of the formative photographers from James Van Der Zee. You also kind of imagine what Frederick Douglass was, talking about when he's talking about, the possibilities for photographs to give African Americans back their dignity at the time.
Black Americans were using photography as a means to assert who they are in the world, thinking about photography as a democratic medium that allows one to disengage in a socio-political power dynamic that places Black people, Black bodies on the margins. Photography became a way to sort of reclaim that. And I think that that's what is happening in Amy's practice.
Historically, portraiture has really been a marker of time and place, this sort of space for who gets to be historicized. She really distills the figures in her paintings in a way that they're sort of floating in their own realm.
I think there's a great power in representing people who have often been told that they are disempowered, often been told that their lives don't matter, often been told that they are not this or that, on a canvas, and allow them to see real reflections of themselves, right? And I think the effect that has is that it allows other people who are not, represented in the frame, but who might live similar lives as the people who are represented, to say, oh, I matter too, right? To say that, there's something about my likeness, about my life, that should be reflected, that should be respected.
At the end of the day, Black bodies are political. We're just political. History is political. That's the battle. There has to be some relief from that, or we can never evolve as a people. The work is, for me, the beginning of trying to figure out a way to deal with that political body versus the real person.
And most people wake up with the expectation of making it through the day, but that's actually a luxury, and it was a luxury that I didn't have for 10 years. When I was 30 years old, I got diagnosed with congestive heart failure. My cardiologist basically told me there's a chance that your heart could stop at any moment. I never imagined myself living to be past a certain age, so approaching the canvas was like, okay, I have 10 years to make this legacy that I want to leave behind, and what is this going to be after I die? Everything about painting was cathartic for those reasons. Fast forward 10 years, I'm 40 years old, I have a new heart. I'm still trying to figure out how to put it to words, but it's one of those ooh moments. I'm working for different reasons now. I have a future, but I still, when I make my work, I'm coming from my core. I want you to hold this pose right here. When I was approaching this body of work, it was a conscious decision to try to add something different to the conversation and be my genuine self. I decided to just, play around with fantasy and play around with ideas of magic and play around with, creating these narratives that I felt like I wanted to see exist. And I just wanted to step out of the one that I've known my whole life. And these characters just kind of represent that. I'm greatly influenced by Bill Bartlett. I mean, he's the reason why I make portraits, the reason why I paint so large. Bill Bartlett did this painting called Object Permanence. For some reason, that painting just really affected me, and it's just, I go back to it when I feel like I've gotten too far away from that thing that inspired me. I think one key insight that I want people to leave with after they look at my work, just to be able to imagine. A little bit of imagination will affect somebody who's looking at a painting and make them see themselves differently. Walking in somebody else's shoes or just engaging in a different way. A lot of the pieces that I make, I think they start in a place of fantasy. Miss Everything was inspired by Alice in Wonderland. The big dress, the teacup, you're left with the impression that she's playing dress up, but that she's also striving for something different than who she is and seeing herself in a way that other people may not see her. Miss Everything is who she is now in this present moment. The idea of being seen as anything other than the color of her skin. Her name is Crystal. It took us about an hour just for her to relax to give me that pose where her shoulder went up and her chin went up and she just became Miss Everything in that one moment. I wanted that painting to be relatable. I feel like there's a way that anybody can connect to it. I really want people to be able to write their own story. Like, who do you think this person is? Why do you think she put that on this morning? I want to lay the image there and just let it be and see how it develops as people interact with the image.
In the winter of 2018, Amy Sherald's life turned upside down, but not in a bad way. That's when her portrait of former First Lady Michelle Obama was unveiled, causing a frenzy at the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C.
It was exciting. I was happy that everybody was really eager to see it. She is an icon, and there should be lines to see her, and there should be lines to see this painting. Thanks for coming up.
Yeah. But Sherald has moved on to her next act. A new show at the gallery Hauser and Wirth in New York City displays her latest batch of paintings. Those two have been a hit.
There were lines around the block.
Yeah, I didn't see that until afterwards, but I was shocked and excited that so many people showed up. And also just the diversity of the crowd, all ages, races. It was just really great to see that kind of energy in a gallery space where you normally assume it's kind of stuffy. It was a really down to earth.
Most people learned her name because you were painting one of the most famous women in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And this exhibit, you're going back to what you've always done.
Well, I never left it.
You never?
Yeah, that's the assumption, but I never left it. That was one painting.
She prefers to paint what she calls everyday people.
I just see people and know immediately that there's somebody who I would like to make a painting of. Okay. I approach them awkwardly and pull out my cell phone. And
what's your
pitch?
pitch?
This is my website. Hi, my name is Amy Sherald. This is my website. I make paintings, and I would like to photograph you. It only takes an hour. You get $100, and you know what I mean. Like, I try to make it seem as simple as possible.
She met this model on the subway, and this one through a friend. But regardless of where she meets her models, She paints all of them in gray skin tones.
I look at the gray skin, I think about it's the inside of the outside that you normally experience, like you're experiencing the inside, the more private life of Black people.
Adding to that intimacy, Sherald has placed the portraits at eye level.
His eyes are painted so they're able to meet your gaze. And I just think that's really important because it allows for the paintings to express their humanity.
The show also features 2 large-scale paintings, one inspired by this famous photo.
It's a real pivotal painting for me. I think it really takes my work into a different direction. And, I oftentimes think about the history of America and construction, and I think that I'm processing those kinds of ideas about the meaning of my Americanness and my history in this country.
Plans are already in the works for all of these paintings to head to American museums. As for Amy Sherald, she says she plans to stick with her everyday models.
I'm really trying to correct an art historical narrative. Art history is long, and like the first Black artist exhibition that wasn't in the basement of the YMCA or something like that wasn't until I think like 1940 something here in Baltimore. That's the first one. There's a lot of catching up to do. Receiving the Driscoll Prize has been significant to me because I'm at a pivotal point in my career. It felt like a magical gift from the art gods. Talking to Mark Bradford and Rashid, literally I thought I had these limitations, right? I feel limitless now because of their just courage and ability to just be able to ask for what they want. The experience of receiving the commission to paint the First Lady was life-changing. There's a mystery around her, but then there's also the Michelle Obama that is generously present with all of us, that inspires us, that we can see ourselves in, that it's just very relatable. And because of that, she's become, in my opinion, a universal archetype. And her image offers young women and young men a new way of seeing themselves. And in my portraits, I also create those kinds of mirrors so that when people come into spaces like that, their expectations of themselves might be changed, but then the expectations of people who have an idea of what they should see in the museum could be shifted as well. I'm looking for the same feeling that I got when I was looking at my grandmother's photograph. It's like frozen in time in black and white, and they're so still and their eyes tell you so much, more than any animated selfie in 2018 could, because I was really thinking about, again, about that American realism narrative of just painting Black people not in any kind of state of contention or not necessarily didactic, but just being themselves and creating these images that I want to, become universal.